The clacking sound of the keyboard echoed softly in my small room, a workspace, a home, a place where I was both a mother and a freelance accountant, carefully saving every penny to raise my son. My name is Rachel, 35 years old, and a single mother of a 10-year-old boy named Ethan. The clock on the wall ticked closer to 3:15 p.m. I had 30 more minutes before picking him up from school. "Mom, are you done yet?" Ethan peeked his head into the room, his tousled brown hair and deep blue eyes a perfect mirror of his father. I smiled and put down my coffee mug. "Almost, sweetie. Did you finish your homework?" He nodded and handed me a piece of paper. "I finished all the math, but I have one history question left." I've always taken pride in Ethan's academic performance. Ever since my father passed away from a heart attack 5 years ago, I've carried the full weight of our family on my own, but I never complained. "Just give me 10 more minutes and I'll help you." Then the phone rang. I sighed when I saw the name on the screen. Diane, my mother. "Rachel, we need to talk about the dinner tomorrow night." Her voice carried that familiar, cold, commanding tone. "Vanessa will be introducing her fiancé. You'll be there, right?" I frowned slightly. Vanessa, my sister, has always been the golden child in Mom's eyes. Beautiful, socially graceful, constantly favored. And me, I was always labeled the dry one, too practical, too dull. "I'll be there, Mom. I'll bring Ethan too." A pause, then a sigh from the other end. "Fine, I suppose. But make sure he behaves. Don't let him ruin Vanessa's special day." Her words caught in my throat. Ethan was never disrespectful. If anything, he was the most well-mannered child I knew. If there was a problem, it certainly wasn't him. "All right, Mom. So, what does Vanessa's fiancé do?" "Nathan Foster, investment banker, comes from a wealthy family. Graduated from Harvard, polished, refined, elegant. Perfect for Vanessa." I ended the call with a quiet ache in my chest. My mother had always been obsessed with status and appearances. The next day, Ethan and I stood in front of my mother's large suburban house. I took a deep breath and gently squeezed my son's shoulder. "It's okay, Mom," Ethan said softly. "I know Grandma and Aunt Vanessa don't really like us." I froze. My heart ached. Children often feel things more deeply than adults think. As I opened the door, I could already hear Vanessa's sharp laughter coming from the living room. She wore a cocktail dress, elegant and flashy, holding a wine glass and chatting with a man I didn't recognize. "Rachel? Ethan? Finally!" My mother greeted us with a lukewarm smile. "Vanessa, your sister is here." Vanessa turned, flashing a polite smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "So glad you made it. This is my fiancé, Nathan Foster." Nathan stood up. Tall, brown hair, calm eyes. There was something oddly familiar about his face, like I'd seen him somewhere long ago. "Nice to meet you, Rachel," Nathan said gently, extending his hand. "Vanessa's told me a lot about you." "Pleasure," I replied, shaking his hand. "This is my son, Ethan." Nathan crouched down to Ethan's eye level. "Hi there, Ethan. What grade are you in?" "Fifth," Ethan said, a little shyly. "That's a great age. When I was in 5th grade, I built a model of the solar system for a science fair." I was surprised. Few men like him spoke to kids with such natural warmth. Vanessa cleared her throat. "Nathan, could you pour me some wine?" I took a seat at the dining table, quietly observing. While Mom and Vanessa gushed endlessly about the wedding dress, the luxurious venue, the catering service, no one asked for my opinion. I was invisible, as always. "Rachel, no need to worry about dresses," Vanessa suddenly said. "You're not in the bridal party." I blinked. "I'm not a bridesmaid?" "We haven't been that close, have we?" she said with fake concern. "Besides, with you being a single mom, you must be busy." Mom nodded along. "Yes, we didn't want to burden you." I clenched my hands under the table. Ethan gently squeezed mine. Quiet, comforting. Then Nathan looked up, a slight frown between his brows. "But isn't family participation important? I think Rachel and Ethan should be part of the celebration." I looked at him surprised. He gave me a small smile, kind, understanding. At least one person here still saw me as human. Since that dinner, I hadn't heard much more from my mother or Vanessa about the wedding plans. Everything seemed to revolve around them: custom gowns from Paris, tastings at five-star restaurants, gold-embossed invitations, all proudly displayed on social media. And me, as usual, left out on the sidelines. Yet strangely, every time I dropped Ethan off at Mom's house after tutoring or came by to help with errands, I happened to run into Nathan. He always seemed to appear just when I was sorting out the seating chart, confirming invitation addresses, or reviewing vendor details, tasks no one had asked me to do. "You're helping Vanessa again?" Nathan asked one afternoon as I was sealing a towering stack of envelopes. "I'm used to it," I replied softly. "Vanessa and Mom always assume I'll take care of the practical stuff." He stood beside me in silence for a moment, then said gently, "You're not like what Vanessa described." "See?" I looked up, surprised. "What do you mean?" "Nothing," Nathan smiled. "I just hope we'll get more chances to talk. You and Ethan, too." There was something in his gaze that unsettled me, not in a bad way. It was familiar. But from where? That afternoon, as I was coordinating delivery times with the reception venue, Ethan came bounding in, his face lit up. "Mom, I finished my homework!" Nathan, sitting nearby, smiled immediately. "What was it about, Ethan?" "History? I researched the Roman Empire," Ethan said proudly. "Really? I love history too. Did you know Julius Caesar was stabbed more than 20 times? Nathan sat down next to him and began chatting like they were old friends. I stood nearby, watching them. A strange feeling bloomed inside me, warm, soft, healing. I had spent so many years raising Ethan alone, and not once had a man genuinely taken interest in my son like this. After Ethan ran off to play, Nathan turned to me, still watching the boy. "Rachel," he said slowly, "you seem familiar." I paused. "You feel familiar to me too, but I just can't place it." Nathan held my gaze for a moment, then nodded as if making note of something quietly inside himself. A few days later, as I was organizing thank you gift boxes for guests, Nathan called me. "I have something I want to ask," he said seriously. "I want you to be the maid of honor." I was stunned. But I wasn't even asked to be a bridesmaid. Vanessa already picked her close friends. I spoke to her myself. For me, family should be represented in the ceremony, and I think you deserve that. I was speechless. "I know this might upset your mother and Vanessa," he continued, "but I can't just stand by and watch them treat you like this." I wanted to thank him, but my throat tightened. After years of silence and being disregarded, I'd forgotten what it felt like to have someone speak up for me. Later that day, my mother called. "Rachel, what did you do to Vanessa? She's crying her eyes out." I kept my voice steady. "I didn't do anything. Nathan offered. I even told him I'd decline if Vanessa didn't want me there." "Well, now it's too late to back out," she snapped. "You always act like the victim to ruin your sister's life." I clenched my jaw. The same old blame, the same old venom. But this time something had shifted. I wasn't trembling like before. Maybe because now I knew I wasn't alone anymore. On the morning of the wedding, I woke up earlier than usual. I'd been tossing and turning all night. Not out of fear, but because my heart wouldn't stop racing. Being the maid of honor in a wedding where I'd long been treated like an outsider felt surreal. And yet, for once, I didn't feel small. I chose a modest sky blue dress. Not flashy, not extravagant, just me, plain and simple. Ethan came into my room, his hair neatly combed, wearing a navy tie and beaming with his little soccer captain badge pinned to his shirt. "You look beautiful, Mom," he said. "But are you really okay?" I knelt down to look into his eyes. "We've been through worse, Ethan. I'll be fine." We arrived at the church early. I avoided everyone's eyes, not wanting to cause any disruption. As I stepped into the preparation room, Vanessa was surrounded by a group of bridesmaids, with my mother standing nearby, adjusting her veil. Vanessa glanced at me, then gave a curt nod. "Hi, Rachel." I nodded back, saying nothing. My mother scanned me from head to toe, lips pursed. "That dress? Well, it's very you." I didn't respond. I was used to them wrapping their insults in polite tones. The ceremony began with solemn music. I stood behind Vanessa, keeping a polite smile on my face. But my eyes drifted toward Nathan at the far end of the aisle. Our eyes met, and he smiled. A real smile. The ceremony passed smoothly, and then came the reception. I sat quietly at a table with Ethan, avoiding the spotlight, just eating and observing. I didn't belong to this crowd, and I knew it. When it was time for speeches, Vanessa stepped up to the mic. I wasn't surprised. She always loved the spotlight. "Thank you all for being here today," she said sweetly. "This is the happiest day of my life, and I want to introduce someone special in our family." An uneasy feeling crept in. "This is my sister Rachel," Vanessa said, turning toward me. "A single mother, who's lived without being loved by anyone." Laughter echoed in a few corners of the room. I felt the blood drain from my face. "Just kidding, just kidding," Vanessa added quickly, giggling. I lowered my head. Under the table, Ethan gripped my hand tightly. I fought the urge to cry. But it didn't end there. My mother stepped forward and took the microphone. "My eldest is always so serious and boring," she said in a cheerful tone. "But hey, she's still usable. Comes with a slightly defective kid, but still under warranty." I couldn't breathe. Ethan looked up at me, his eyes brimming. I stood up and whispered, "Let's go." But then, from the other side of the room, Nathan stood too, his face flushed with anger. The entire hall fell into silence. He walked to the stage and gently took the mic from my mother. His eyes found mine, as if seeking permission. "Ladies and gentlemen," Nathan began, his voice deep and firm, "today is supposed to be the most important day of my life, but not for the reasons you think." The room held its breath. "First, I want to say, what was said just now about Rachel and Ethan was cruel. That is not what family looks like. That is cruelty." I stood frozen. And there's something I'd like to share with everyone. This isn't the first time I've met Rachel. My heart skipped a beat. A foggy memory stirred in the back of my mind. Nathan's eyes never left mine. 10 years ago, my younger sister Emily was diagnosed with leukemia. In her final months, someone stayed by her side, cared for her, made her smile when no one else could. His voice trembled. "That person was Rachel." Gasps whispered across the room. My hand flew to my mouth. The memory came back. The hospital hallway, the smell of antiseptic, a girl losing her hair, and a young man sitting quietly in the corner, broken. That was Nathan. "She didn't just care for Emily," he continued. "She also brought a little boy, her son. He drew pictures, made people smile, and brought warmth into a place filled with pain. Emily kept his drawings by her side until the very end." I looked at Ethan. "Was that me, Mom?" I nodded, tears rolling down my cheeks. "You were 5. You used to draw pictures and give them to patients." Nathan smiled. "Emily called him her little son." I stood there in shock, barely holding it together. Nathan turned to Vanessa, his tone shifting. "I tried to believe the best in you. I hoped you would change. But today showed me the truth." Then he pulled off his wedding ring. "This wedding is over." I stood frozen in the middle of the reception hall. Ethan held tightly onto my hand, while every pair of eyes in the room turned toward the stage. Nathan remained at the microphone, his expression composed, but his eyes burned with unmistakable anger. "I know Rachel not through the biased stories Vanessa and her mother told," he said slowly. "I know her from 10 years ago." The room fell completely silent. I was stunned. My memory swirled. Dim hospital corridors, pale lights, the sterile scent of antiseptic. And a young woman, thin and pale, her hair falling from chemotherapy. Emily Foster. "My sister Emily was diagnosed with leukemia at the age of 25, Nathan continued. In her final months, someone was always there, caring for her, encouraging her, helping her smile when no one else could." His voice trembled. "That someone was Rachel." Gasps and murmurs rippled through the guests. I covered my mouth, tears welling in my eyes. And now, I remembered clearly, that quiet young man who always sat silently in the corner of Emily's hospital room, head bowed in sorrow. That was Nathan. "She didn't just care for my sister," he continued. "She also brought her little son, Ethan. He would come with handmade drawings, give them to patients, light up the hospital with his smile. Ethan looked up at me. Mom, was that me? I nodded, brushing his hair gently. You were 5. You used to draw pictures and give them to everyone. Nathan smiled warmly. Emily called you her little son. She kept your drawings in her drawer until the day she passed away. The room was breathless. There were no cameras flashing, no laughter, only a heavy silence and glistening eyes. 3 years ago, I met Vanessa at a party. Nathan went on. I was drawn to her brightness. After losing Emily, my world had gone dark. Vanessa was full of energy, and for a time, I thought she was what I needed. His voice turned colder. But when I found out she was Rachel's sister, I thought maybe fate was giving me a chance to reconnect with someone who had brought light to my family. He looked at Vanessa now, his face full of disappointment. I tried to believe her stories about Rachel were misunderstandings. I tried to accept her selfishness, her arrogance, her coldness, because I thought people could change. See? Vanessa's face twisted in disbelief. Nathan, what the hell are you doing? This is a joke, right? My mother, Diane, had collapsed into a chair, speechless. Nathan didn't even look at her. No, Vanessa, this isn't a joke. And after today, I'm done pretending. He slowly removed the wedding ring from his finger and set it down on the podium. This wedding is over. Gasps erupted from the crowd. Vanessa screamed, lunging toward him. You can't do this! You owe me. I owe you nothing, Nathan said, cutting her off, firm and unflinching. I made a promise to Emily before she died. She asked me to live with integrity, and today, I'm keeping that promise. He stepped down from the stage, walking toward me and Ethan. I was still frozen, barely able to process what was happening. Nathan reached out his hand to me. Come with me, Rachel. I hesitated. Are you sure? More sure than I've ever been. Ethan looked from me to Nathan. Can we go, Mom? I nodded. I reached out and took Nathan's hand. Ethan took the other. Behind us, Vanessa screamed. My mother yelled after us. Do you even know how much this wedding cost? Who's going to pay? Nathan turned his head slightly. Send the bill to my office. And with that, the 3 of us walked out of the reception hall, amid stares, hushed whispers, and a few discreetly raised phones. But I didn't care anymore. For the first time in years, I felt like I was finally walking out of the shadows. We stepped out of the hall into the fading afternoon light. Me, Ethan, and Nathan. 3 people, 3 wounded souls, searching for something that felt like a new beginning. The door closed behind us, but the echoes of the wedding still rang in the distance. Vanessa's screeching, my mother's furious wailing, the murmuring of a confused crowd. It all felt like a heavy shadow we had just stepped out of. Are you okay? Nathan asked as the 3 of us got into the car. I nodded, though honestly I wasn't sure. My emotions were tangled. Shock, relief, confusion, and something like freedom. Ethan sat quietly in the back seat, looking out the window, watching the sun slowly dip below the horizon. Are you okay, Ethan? I asked gently. I think so, he replied after a long pause. I just don't understand how people can be so mean to you. I turned to him, squeezed his hand. You don't need to understand that, sweetheart. What matters is, we're still here, together. Nathan parked the car outside a small seaside restaurant. It had a wooden terrace overlooking the ocean where gentle waves rolled in and the sky was brushed with warm golden hues. Peaceful, so strangely peaceful, so opposite from the place we had just left behind. The 3 of us sat together without saying a word for a few minutes. Menus were in front of us, but none of us really read them. The silence was thick with emotions that hadn't found words yet. I'm sorry, Nathan broke the silence, for creating that scene. I shook my head. You didn't do anything wrong. In fact, thank you for standing up for us. I looked over at Ethan, still staring out at the sea. Especially for my son. Nathan placed a hand on Ethan's shoulder. You know, my sister Emily used to call you her little son. Every time you visited her at the hospital, she said it gave her hope. Ethan's eyes lit up. Really? I remember drawing a dog with a birthday hat for a lady with brown hair. Nathan laughed. That was her. She kept that drawing in her bedside drawer. I choked up. The things I had done so quietly, so long ago, things I never thought mattered, had meant the world to someone. And today, that act of kindness had come full circle in a way I could never have imagined. When the food arrived, we ate slowly, quietly, in an atmosphere of gentle warmth. No gossiping, no judgment, no hostile glances, only the sound of forks on porcelain and waves crashing softly against the shore. After dinner, I couldn't help asking the question that had lingered in my mind all day. Nathan, I have to ask, why did you get engaged to Vanessa? Did you ever love her? He paused, turning his water glass slowly. I think I did, he admitted. After Emily passed away, I felt lost. Vanessa came into my life with all this brightness and energy. For a while, I thought she was what I needed. I nodded. I understood. Sometimes we hold on to something just to avoid drowning. And when I found out she was your sister, he continued, I thought it was fate. Even though I didn't remember you clearly, I felt like maybe life was trying to bring something back to me. He looked up and smiled faintly. But as time went on, I realized her brightness was just surface level. She constantly needed attention, and she lacked compassion, especially toward her own family. I asked gently, then why still marry her? Nathan gave a sheepish shrug. I kept hoping she'd change. And to be honest, it's hard to back out once people expect a wedding to happen. The pressure from both families, it was overwhelming. He looked me in the eyes. But today, when I saw how they treated you and Ethan, I couldn't ignore it anymore. I had to follow what I felt was right. His phone buzzed. On the screen, Vanessa. I looked at him. Do you want to answer? Nathan sighed. I don't think there's anything left to say. He silenced the call. A text came in immediately, but he didn't open it. He looked back at me. From now on, I want to spend my time with people who matter. I was surprised. Where are we now? From the back seat, Ethan's voice chimed in, innocent, soft. Yeah, where are we? Nathan chuckled. Maybe at the beginning of something better. A year had passed since that ruined wedding day. The city had entered autumn. Trees in Maple Park shed their leaves, painting the sidewalks in shades of amber and gold. I stood in front of my newly opened office, hanging a fresh sign, Rachel Financial Services. A small, peaceful accounting firm, warm and welcoming. It was the fruit of many sleepless nights, steady determination, and quiet support from Nathan, who never once sought credit. He never said it aloud, but I knew. He was the one who had referred my very first clients. I took a deep breath, still gripping the freshly varnished wooden sign. Never had I felt this solid, this grounded. Not because someone was holding me up, but because I had stood up after being insulted, cast aside, and belittled, and didn't fall. Mom, we're going to be late! Ethan's voice called out behind me. He had grown taller, stronger, more confident. His hair was neatly combed, his backpack swung over one shoulder, and a shiny badge that read Team Captain gleamed proudly on his chest. I'll take him to school, Nathan said, appearing in the doorway. He had been beside me every day since that night. Not overbearing, not rushing things. We had lived together since last Christmas. We weren't engaged. We didn't need to be. Our bond didn't need a ring to be real. But don't you have a meeting at 9? I asked, raising an eyebrow. He chuckled. Being 30 minutes late won't end the world. Taking Ethan to school matters more. We dropped Ethan off at his elementary school, but before that, we made a quiet stop at the city's central cemetery where Emily now rested. Nathan brought fresh flowers. I brought a small stone that Ethan had picked years ago, part of a custom he and Emily once shared. We stood silently before the headstone. Ethan placed the stone carefully on top. I still remember she called me her little son. I took Nathan's hand. His voice was barely above a whisper. I kept my promise, Emily. We left without speaking. It felt like a chapter had finally been written to completion. As for Vanessa, after the scandalous wedding fallout, society gradually turned its back on her. The friends who used to flatter her vanished one by one, especially after my mother, Diane, tried to sue Nathan for humiliating her daughter. Of course, Nathan had already covered every wedding expense without a single complaint. But that didn't stop the tide of public opinion. Vanessa, the once proud, glamorous socialite, had become a joke in the very circles she used to rule. Eventually, she moved out of her luxury condo and into a much smaller apartment. No more designer dresses, no more fine wine, no more glamorous lifestyle. Just her, and the bitterness she once sowed. My mother didn't fare much better. The sophisticated friends she used to boast about now avoided her. Gossip forums lit up with stories of her outrageous behavior, and when she tried to reach out to me, I refused, politely but firmly. She called once. I answered. "Rachel, I was wrong. I didn't think things would turn out like this." I said nothing, not out of anger, but because I no longer needed her approval. I didn't need anyone to call me a good daughter or a worthy sister. I just needed to live, as myself. "I hope you can forgive me," I answered in a calm voice. "Forgiveness takes time, Mom. Life is what I'm focusing on now." Then I hung up. For the first time in my life, I didn't cry after a call from my mother. That evening, while Ethan was fast asleep in front of the fireplace, Nathan handed me a cup of hot cocoa and sat beside me. Our new home was small but cozy. The firewood crackled gently, the wind whispered at the windows, and something inside me, something long dormant, was finally at peace. Nathan brushed my hair back behind my ear and asked quietly, "Where should we take Ethan tomorrow?" I leaned my head on his shoulder. "Anywhere. As long as it's a place where we don't feel small." He laughed softly. "Well then, this world still has plenty of places for us to go." And we sat there side by side, saying nothing more. There was no need to. Christmas Eve. Snow fell gently outside the window. Our little house was glowing with the warm light of the fireplace and the soft twinkle of string lights wrapped around a tall tree standing proudly in the living room. Ethan had already drifted off to sleep on the sofa, clutching his favorite teddy bear. The gift boxes beneath the tree remained untouched. The air was calm and sweet, like a silent symphony. I sat curled in a wool blanket, watching the snowflakes stick to the glass. Nathan entered from the kitchen carrying 2 mugs of hot cocoa. He placed one in front of me, then sat down beside me. "Did you ever think you'd have a Christmas like this?" he asked softly, his voice like the snow falling outside. I smiled and shook my head. Honestly, no. I used to think I'd grow old in silence, just Ethan and me, surrounded by piles of ledgers and tax documents. Nathan chuckled, then suddenly he reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small velvet box, green like pine. He placed it gently in my hand. I looked at him startled. "Nathan." "Don't worry," he said, his gaze steady. "No pressure. There's just something I've been wanting to do for a long time." I opened the box. Inside was a simple ring with a deep green emerald glowing softly in the light. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't loud. It was steady, just like him. "This ring," Nathan began slowly, "belonged to Emily. Before she passed, she said, 'If one day you meet someone truly special, give this to her.'" Tears welled in my eyes. I gripped the box tightly. "And I think I've found that person," he whispered. "You're not just special to me. You're everything. Not just someone I remember, but someone I've chosen." He took my hand, his voice firm and gentle. "Rachel, will you marry me? Not because of the past, not because of obligation, but because of now and what comes next. Let's be a real family." I cried, not because I was surprised, but because for years I never thought I'd hear those words. Not from someone who saw my worth without me having to prove it. I didn't answer. I just nodded, slowly, tearfully. Nathan smiled, then slipped the ring onto my finger. My hand trembled. "We're already a family, aren't we?" I whispered, repeating a thought that had lived quietly in my heart. He nodded. "We are. But now, the world will know it too." We embraced in silence. Outside, the snow kept falling, blanketing our yard in white. A new chapter in my life had begun. Not in someone else's shadow, but in my own light. The next morning, Ethan burst down the stairs, his face lit up like the Christmas lights. "I knew this would be the best day ever!" he shouted joyfully. Nathan and I laughed. "Oh? How did you know?" "Because I woke up last night and saw Mom wearing the ring," he said mischievously. I blushed. Nathan winked at him. "You're good at keeping secrets." Ethan thumped his chest proudly. "It's important!" We opened presents, drank hot cocoa, and listened to Christmas music in the living room. No shouting, no judgmental stares, no one telling me I wasn't enough. Just love, kindness, and 3 people writing a new story together. Elsewhere, in a smaller, lonelier apartment, Vanessa sat silently by her window, watching the snow fall. My mother, Diane, had cut ties with most of her social circle after the humiliation. The glamorous world they once worshipped had dissolved like a sugar cube in hot tea. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't need them to fall for me to rise. I just felt relieved, because I was no longer trapped in the cage they had built around me. Life may never be perfect, but now I know this. True family isn't defined by blood, but by choice, love, and respect. And that Christmas, I was chosen again, not by fate, but by my own heart.